welcome to Weekly Reddit. In today's episode of r/ProRevenge. Accuse me of stealing? You will lose everything. Try to blackmail me? I'll ruin your life. Refuse to pay $60 to fix my roof? Okay, I'll close your building site down and cost you hundreds of thousands of dollars. Accuse me of stealing? You will lose everything. First post. Be kind. This happened way back in the dark ages, 1986. I was 21 at the time and working for a gas station that was associated with a certain grocery store chain in Washington state. It was owned by a company not affiliated with said chain, but had locations at nearly every one. As this was long before the days of debit cards, this was a cash-only gas station. We didn't even take credit cards. Customers would pull up, pump their gas and then come to my window to pay. We also sold cigarettes. No drinks, no snacks. Customers couldn't even get into my booth. I had been working there about a year when the company announced it was closing the location. My manager and I were offered positions at another location upstate and we both accepted. We moved our respective families and started our new jobs. As new hires, this station was incredible busy. We did more business in 8 hours than my old location would do in a week. This location also had a different setup. Here you would pull into the station from a single entrance, pump your gas, and then drive forward to a single exit where the pay here booth was located. There were always 2 cashiers on duty. Each cashier had a cash drawer. One thing I should note, there were also no computers. So closing the drawer down between shifts was time consuming and tedious. We had to manually count the cigarettes remaining, and count the cash drawers. We would fill out an end of shift report listing the starting balances and the ending balances. We also had to list the gallons sold from each pump. At the end of the shift, the total of gallons sold and the total cigarettes sold should equal the cash balance. It is important to note here that not once in the year I had worked for the previous location had I been off by more than 10 cents. The following morning after my first shift I was informed by the manager that I was short $50. Impossible, I said, I balanced out yesterday. He said that I must have stolen that money after I had completed the paperwork. I just looked at him and said, no, I didn't. He gave me a verbal warning and said if it happened again I would be fired and the stolen money would be deducted from my paycheck this week. In the 5 days that followed I realized quickly the manager was up to something. My old manager, who was just another worker now, was also accused of stealing. As was one other new employee. I can't vouch for the other employee but I'm pretty sure she did nothing wrong. The employees that had been there a while were never accused of anything. I did some checking and found out this manager was relatively new, had only been there about 6 months, and the other cashiers had been here before him. Only new cashiers were being accused of stealing. And that location had been having stealing problems for about 6 months and the turnover was high with the new employees. I came to work at 6 a.m. on a Monday only to be told I was being fired. For cause. The manager accused me of taking $500 out of my drawer the previous Friday. He said he only discovered it this morning, even though he had worked sat and sun. I said okay and left. I was pretty angry and instead of going home, I parked in the grocery store parking lot and proceeded to settle in to watch the gas station. I knew that at 9 a.m. sharp, he would take the cash in the safe and make the weekend deposit. At 9 a.m. he left the gas station and headed to the bank. But instead of walking into the bank, he walked into the Indian casino next door. It's not really a casino like we think of today, but more of a betting parlor for the races. It did have slot machines, but no card tables. I think, well, this is interesting. He comes out of the casino at exactly 10 a.m., walks next door to the bank, does his business and then heads back to the gas station. I head home with a plan. Every morning I follow him from the gas station to the casino. I take a picture of him leaving. and one of him arriving at the bank and walking into the casino. I take pictures of him coming out and then heading to the bank. I do this for 5 days straight. He even went on Saturday. On day 3 my old manager was fired for stealing $150. I get the film developed, no digital camera in the dark ages. Note the times and dates on the back of each one. Then I call the main office of the gas company. It's after 5 but I'm hoping someone is there. And there is. I speak to a woman and explain my situation and she says she knows exactly who I should speak to and transfers me. By some grace of God, she has transferred me to none other than the president CEO of the company. I tell him my story and tell him I did not steal from his company and could prove who actually did. He took down my information and said he would be in touch. I'm thinking to myself, yeah right. The next morning I went to the station to perform my usual observation of the manager. At 9 AM he leaves for the bank. At 10 AM he comes out. At that moment 2 stern-looking gentlemen approach him. One pulls out his wallet and shows him something. The other one is talking. The manager goes pale and takes a step back. Next thing I know he is being escorted to a car I hadn't noticed and they drive off. I lose them at a traffic signal so I head back to the station. They all show back up about 5 minutes later, and a few minutes after that a police cruiser pulls in. The officer talks to the stern gentleman and proceeds to place the manager in handcuffs. The other man says nothing but is glaring daggers at the manager. The president called me later that afternoon and informed me that the manager had been arrested for embezzlement. Turns out that in 6 months he had managed to steal about $5,000. He would take the store cash into the casino and gamble with it. If he won, he would make the normal bank deposit. If he lost, he would make the deposit and note in his records that we had been short the previous day. The CEO had already been focusing on that location because of the stealing and high turnover rate, but my information helped them figure out what exactly had been going on. I was thanked and sent a substantial check as a reward. My old manager was offered the manager's job and I was offered my old job back. I declined as I had already found another job that I liked more and paid better. The gambling manager was sentenced to 1 year in jail and ordered to attend counseling for his gambling addiction. His wife divorced him and took their 3 children to California. His house was foreclosed on and he ended up in a homeless shelter. Don't accuse me of stealing. I will get revenge. Update. Thank you for the likes and awards. Try to blackmail me? I'll ruin your life. Throw away because this could be a real problem for me career-wise if the phone sex company I work for found out. Also obligatory I'm on mobile apology for formatting. This happened a few years ago. I was maybe 26 at the time. I am a trans man, but present feminine and work as a professional dominatrix as a woman. I do a lot of work through a popular phone sex website. I had a client contact me on there and get my Skype ID. Sometimes clients want to cam chat there. It's not technically allowed by the site terms but they turn a blind eye because money, and he messaged me to negotiate a session. He complained about my rates, demanded I do stuff I'm not comfortable with. I don't get fully nude on cam calls, I don't talk about having clients touch me sexually, I don't do sessions as a sub, and eventually threatened me with bad reviews, and to report me to the site and said I didn't want to show him my junk because I was a very nasty word for a trans woman. Ironic, I know. He called me every name in the book and I blocked him and thought nothing of it. I'd been with that site 5 years and made them hundreds of thousands over the course of them, so I wasn't worried. However, a little later he pops up again with a new account and screen name a few days later, threatening violence and accusing me of stealing from him. I screen cap this and send it to the site. They say there's nothing they can do about him creating multiple accounts but ban them as they occur. I block him again and think maybe he'll give up. Nope. A few days later there's a new account that talks in the same tone, demands the same shit, etc. So this time, with all the usernames he's used, I take to Google, and what do I find? But other PSOs who dealt with him complaining about him. I message some of them about what's happening, and one gets back to me super fast. She says he's been harassing her for years, telling her he hoped she'd have a miscarriage when she was pregnant, threatening her BF. At this point I'm furious, not only on my behalf but on behalf of everyone else he's pulled this shit with. She tried to go to the cops, no help there, of course, but this idiot had given her a ton of personal info, from his full name, to his address. I am a pretty good internet detective thanks to my line of work, so I start Googling and putting together info. I find everything, and I mean everything, from his mum's name, the date of his dad's death, to his girlfriend's name, to the shitty band he played in high school, where he works, and who his landlord is. I call everyone politely informing them of what this little shit is up to. His mum, his GF, his everybody. I call his GF at work just to make sure she gets it. He contacts me on Kik, demanding a response, and threatening to sue me for harassment. I laugh my ass off and explain how that doesn't work and that if he contacts me again I'll sue him for harassment and show him the statutes on it where we live. You have to tell the person to stop contacting you before it can be harassment. I'd told him multiple times to stop bothering me, but he'd only ever demanded that I do talk to him. After that I did stop contacting him, but I gave all the info I'd dug up to the other PSOs to do with as they liked. Last I checked he was living with his brother in a truly shitty looking apartment and tweeting about how no one will hire him because people are mean, and about how much he hates women. Edit to clarify, before this he seemed to have a pretty nice life, pretty girlfriend working in real estate, a job in tech, and was renting a pretty nice big house in a nice town. I googled him just now and there are multiple places where if you Google his name it shows you just what kind of person he is. Edit 2, oh my goodness, thank you for the awards. Refuse to pay $60 to fix my roof. Okay, I'll close your building site down and cost you hundreds of thousands of dollars. Names, places and time frames have been changed as per rules. Characters in this story: my friend, who I will call Brian, bullying demolition man we will call Keith, greedy property developer we will call Karen, and the insurance assessor. This tale of this nuclear revenge happened a while back and is a work in progress. It is too good not to tell, and I will try and keep you updated down the track. Brian's neighbor is a typical greedy career landlord that left their rental house in disrepair. The poor tenant was living in the cold house, raw sewerage leaking onto the lawn and holes in the house that you could see light coming out of the house. After multiple requests from Brian, Karen refused to get any repairs done. When the state government introduced new laws about ensuring landlords are insulating their rental properties, instead doing this to the house, Karen kicked their tenant out and left the house vacant for 5 years. The old house deteriorated so much more during this time, with rats infesting the house and invading other houses nearby. Brian and his wife with their limited funds were able to get sufficient lending from the bank and offered to buy the house and do it up themselves to improve the neighborhood or rent it out, as there is a massive shortage of rental properties in our local county. Greedy Karen did not want to sell, nor did she want to spend a cent on the house to remedy the rodent problem. She also did not care about the effect the house was having on aesthetics of the street. It is important to know that Karen and her wealthy family have over 100 rental properties, and due to lax tax laws in this region, they do not pay a cent and can get tax write-offs when their properties deteriorate, then can claim on this as a loss. Long story short, some of them appear to be leeches on our society and are one of the reasons property prices are so high and rent prices are skyrocketing in our area. Her husband is also the chairman of the state's Landlords Association, an association that he often fronts the media for, defending landlords and putting a good media spin on them when there is negative press. Fast forward 5 years and Brian finds out the house is going to be demolished to make way for some new houses to go in on a small section. That's good news at least, though Brian and his wife were anxious about how smoothly the demolition would go due to the fact the houses are quite close to each other. This is important for later. Prior to demolition, the company doing it had to get samples from all sides of the house to check for asbestos. Either Karen made it difficult for the company to get down the side bordering Brian's house, or they simply were too lazy, but only samples from 3 sides, not 4, were taken. Demolition day came around and Brian was concerned that no safety barriers had been put up to protect his house from falling bricks of the chimney, nor was there anything from stopping dust and debris going all over his new deck and porch area. Later that day, Brian had the pleasure of meeting Keith. Keith is the demolition company manager that is well known around the district for only caring about money and has little regard for people or property. Keith was doing the demolition himself today, simply with a digger. Brian returned home during his break at work to check the progress of the demolition and found the demolition was already complete after only an hour or so. The demolished house was in a pile. He climbed up on his roof and to his disbelief found hundreds of bricks had fallen onto his roof, causing damage, though he was lucky none had fallen through into the house. Brian phoned up demolition man Keith to ask about what went wrong. Keith initially played down the damage. Despite there being 200 bricks laying on Brian's roof. Even with the damage done, no apology, and the rude attitude of Keith, Brian kept his cool. "Since I did a little bit of roofing when I was younger, I can fix up the roof if you just get me 4 new sheets of roofing iron and we will call it even. Don't worry about paying for paint, I can sort that out when I paint the whole roof after the fall." Brian's roof was not in the best of shape, but it was in much worse shape after having bricks dumped on it, leaving massive dents and chipping the paint. This is the moment that a simple decision on Keith's part would screw him and the landlord big time. "Not happening, pal. Your roof is effed anyway. I'll get you a sheet of second-hand roofing iron from my yard to repair the damage on roof, and I can come and hose off the dust off your deck and dog kennel." Cue the nuclear revenge. The revenge was not intentionally nuclear, but Brian had a dilemma that his roof was damaged and he needed it repaired. There was rain and snow forecast later in the week and he shouldn't be out of pocket having to buy new materials to fix his own roof up to a good standard. Brian is normally calm and relaxed man, but this situation and the way he and his property were treated sparked an anger that I have never seen before. Brian got in contact with his insurance company, and due to the issue involving a roof, a building assessor arrived that day to assess the claim. The assessor would then be able to seek damages from the landlord or demolition company if he found them to be at fault. Brian also reported the demolition company to the local health and safety authorities due to their lack of safety precautions used when doing the demolition. The assessor got onto the roof with Brian and was mortified to hear how Keith had acted in such disregard with the damage done to the roof, and his lack of an apology for any wrongdoing got the assessor mad. He then looked more concerned, and bent down and picked up some grey fibrous material. Luckily, thanks to COVID, we already have masks on Brian. This here looks like it is asbestos. I don't know how they got the sign off to get this house knocked down in this manner. You don't know at the time of being exposed to this stuff, but if you breathe in these fibers it can cause serious diseases later on in life, including lung cancer. I'll get this sent off to the lab for testing and will be in touch. Fast forward another day and Brian was contacted by his insurance company. It turns out the side of the house that wasn't tested was clad in asbestos. Not just any bad asbestos, the worst possible type you can get. Insurance will be seeking damages to replace Brian's whole roof, not just the damaged part. The cost of replacement is likely to be around $20,000. This is the cheap part. The demolition site has been shut down by local authorities and there needs to be a massive decontamination of the area. This involves having to remove at least half a meter of topsoil on surrounding properties, test the soil and remove more if there is asbestos still found. Areas with decks need to potentially have these removed so soil can be evacuated out underneath. The cost for this cleanup will likely be in the hundreds of thousands of dollars, but who will pay for this is unknown at this stage. Whether it is Keith or Karen's insurance or them personally, time will tell. In regards to Brian, his family and their dog potentially being exposed to the asbestos, that is another battle for them to fight, and I will keep you updated. Update 1: I have just been on the phone to Brian for half an hour. His workplace were very sympathetic and paid for him to have 2 days off trying to sort things out. This is in complete contrast to Karen and Keith, who are yet to apologize and have made life difficult for Brian and his family. Due to the neighboring property being closed off for entry due to the health and safety investigation going on, it means Brian cannot even get scaffolding on his roof yet to fix the roof. Brian is worried now that the landlord is going to try make his life hell. She is also a lawyer apparently. Karen was the person that offered the old roofing iron, apparently not Keith. She spoke to her husband, who said that because the bricks tinted the roof it means it must have been rusty and old, so doesn't need new iron put on. Keith did however go nuts at Brian for getting insurance involved and also the health and safety investigation unit, who are currently doing the investigation. In regards to Brian and family still living in the house, according to the investigator, the risk is negligible and the problems will arise when the debris are removed from the section. This will require a large tent etc. However, the wind has been strong last few days and I feel risk is still high living next door to uncovered broken asbestos cladding that is not being kept damp. Brian asked the investigation office person by phone about what to do about his dog and if they needed vet checkup etc. They were 1 meter away from the fence, which is about a foot from the asbestos, when it was broken up. They responded saying, "Do you think your dog will live more than 20 years? If not, I probably wouldn't worry." Brian is also thinking the landlord is probably scheming revenge of her own. Brian paid for a new fence himself a few years back to border Karen's rental, as when he moved in the old fence was half falling down. She refused to pay half despite this being law. He reckons because the fence is approx 10 centimeters too high, she will ask him to cut the height down at his own cost so it is in perfect position for her new houses that are to be built. Brian's plan is that he will pull the nice expensive fence down entirely and put 600mm high chicken wire mesh up, as this is all that is required by law and there is nothing she can do about it legally, as he paid for and built the fence. I will continue to keep you all updated. Also, as I know the local newspaper editor, I have offered to go with Brian to discuss this story with them once the investigation is completed if Karen tries to make life difficult and also expose Keith for his dirty practices. Keith's company have just been awarded a multi-million-dollar contract for demolition of an old car factory, and this would raise some eyebrows. Update 2: a very small update but not great news. I feel this story, as many have suggested, will not conclude in a warm fuzzy feeling of ultimate revenge as things progress. Firstly, Brian informed me a fence has gone up around the exposed parts of neighboring property. This is only to stop people from public going over to debris pile and scavenging etc., then exposing themselves to the broken asbestos cladding. Brian also needed to take 2 full days off work when this happens to try sort out all the situation and reduce stress on his wife. Talking with all parties involved. So he was down 2 days' wages coming up to Christmas, but his kind boss has paid him special leave for taking them off. The insurance company, after further clarification, will be only paying out for 1/4 of roof and flashings. Brian will have to find funds to pay for the rest. This section of roof is however the most expensive, as it encompasses a large complex parapet, gutter, roofing iron and flashings. Cost? Used 8,000/120 kZR. I hope I can provide something more substantial in a later update when there has been more action.
Don't forget to subscribe so you can stay up with the best content from Reddit.